official. I just want to give a warning to all of you that if for any reason I freeze up, my boyfriend is currently teaching. So we're both on Zoom in our tiny apartment, and our Wi-Fi sometimes goes in and out. I've been successful all day today, but as a facilitator for this, I just want you to know that if for any reason I disappear, it's probably why. So yeah, Barb and I today will be covering networking for graduate students, new NACADA members, and oh gosh, there was a third group and I can't remember.
Anyone else?
Anyone else who wants to network. And so we're just going to briefly introduce ourselves to begin with. As many of you already know, I'm Haley. I'm currently a graduate student at Providence College. I'm a graduate assistant there in the theology department, and I'm also interning with Lisa at URI in the academic advising department. I work with student athletes, and it has been a great semester so far. I have loved every second of what I am doing, and I'm happy to be with you all here today. This is my first time actually at a NACADA conference, so I'm happy that I can both engage with you guys and also help facilitate some of the discussions we're going to be having today.
Got to add your fun fact, Haley.
Oh, I forgot about my fun fact. Yeah, so we'll give you like a whole list. We're going to do breakout rooms with some questions for you guys to answer, talk about, engage with each other a little. I know we have a small group already, but just even break it down a little more so you can get into some in-depth conversations. My fun fact about myself, which hopefully you'll all share with someone if you have one. I was a tap dancer for 12 years. So if any of you ever see me in person and I'm randomly dancing, that's probably why. It's like an old habit I have. So yeah, feel free to take it away, Barb.
Well, I'm Barb Chalmers, and working with Haley down at URI this semester with student athletes, which is a lot of fun. I've learned a lot about football and baseball and track this semester, so that's been very interesting. I'm graduating in May, and I can't wait. I am so happy. I turned in my last paper last week, and I was so relieved that that is the last paper I have to write for graduate school. Let's see. A fun fact about me, when I was a kid, I was a catcher on my softball team. So I thought that was kind of a fun fact. So I did put the questions into the chat. And so would you say, Haley, people would have to copy that, right? And bring it to the individual rooms?
Yes. So we figured, and I know personally for me, whenever anyone presents something with questions, I'm like frantically writing it down, like, oh my gosh, do I have all of the questions? What's happening? I figured we could just post or paste in the chat the questions we want you to answer. So those are going to be just a couple introductory questions. Your name, where are you working now? Sorry. And what are you doing? Whether that be an internship, a GA position, are you someone currently working in the field? Are you new to NACADA? What's going on? Your ideal position and what you're looking for. Maybe some of you are already there, but I know for some of us, we're still in grad school and we're working towards that goal. And then how would you describe the culture at your current institution? What do you like about it? Maybe what would you like to see change? And then, like we talked about, maybe a fun fact about yourself just to make it so it's not completely entirely serious. Get to know you in there. And then for those of you who might already be in the field, but you're new to NACADA, do you have any recommendations for new academic advisors looking to enter the field? Obviously, right now, it's COVID, things have changed. So maybe some of what you traditionally are used to has kind of been thrown out the window. Maybe not. Maybe you still have some great recommendations for anyone that you would like to share with us. That would be very helpful. So what we're going to do, I actually do not have breakout room capabilities. I guess Michelle is going to put us into the breakout room. Did everyone see the questions that Barb posted in the chat? No? Okay. Let's try this. How about now? Oh, that's weird. The way it formatted. So if you want, you can copy the questions yourselves because I don't believe they will go with you into your breakout rooms. Just as if we were sharing a screen, the screen would not follow you into the breakout room as well. So if you want to write it down, feel free to write it down, copy and paste it into your own group chat. But Michelle, whenever you're ready, if you could put us into breakout rooms, that would be great.
Haley, how long do you want to stay in there?
Let's do about 20 minutes. We are thinking that afterwards we can come back, since we are a small group, we can do a full group share if you want. Any ideas that your group talked about. If you have any recommendations, share those out as well. Like I said, we are a small group to begin with, so I think it would be a great time for us to have a full group discussion. All right, we will see you in 20 minutes. All right, I feel like we had a couple more people, maybe not. Does everyone see people from their breakout rooms? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Amazing. So what we're going to do now is share out if there are any major themes that your group talked about, anything you personally want to share out from yourself, your own experience at your institution in networking. Like I said, we have a really small group, so I'm free to, whoever wants to talk may feel free to talk. And yeah, I'm going to leave it open for you guys. I want to hear from you all.
I think the biggest thing was everybody talked about networking and, like, you know, what's a good tip for networking? And everybody just said, go network. But, you know, what does that actually mean? You know, and, you know, in the business field, I have a buddy, he works in Charlotte in corporate finance, and he, you know, makes $100,000 a year. And networking for him is going to the bar with, you know, potential clients and having drinks at, you know, happy hour. So, you know, like you said, it's always sounds like this daunting thing. And, you know, Ben from our group, he said that, you know, he has a colleague that says building rather than networking, you know, and that, like he said, it's a much more welcoming term. You know, it's just this big daunting thing. It's like, oh, I have to go network, you know, but what do you do? You know, and that could just be, hey, we're going to go get a drink. Do you want to go to the bar and talk about something that's, you know, not related to the F that your student athlete just got in a class? You know, let's go talk about things that relate to, you know, things that are, you know, relatable outside of work. So, you know, it doesn't have to be this big thing. It can just be having a conversation.
Yeah, that was something, I was in Zach's group, and that was something that I personally brought up. Jordan and I were the only two people in our group that are currently grad students not in the field. So we had the opportunity to really like get in and talk about what it is to network and why, personally for me, it can seem so daunting. Like, I'm not someone to usually go and, you know, put myself out there in that way. And something I didn't share with my group, but I'll share with you now, especially because she's here, is the only reason I know my supervisor, Lisa, is because Angela told me I should go and interview, have an informational interview with her. So if it wasn't for Angela networking with me and Lisa, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So I think that's something that, once again, we think of the word networking, it seems a little scary and daunting, but in reality, I was talking to a classmate that I've gotten to know really well, and she recommended that I go and talk to someone in my field of interest, and that's how that worked out for me. So I liked that we were able to dig deep into that in my conversations with my group, and I do like the word building because it does seem a little less scary. Does anyone else have anything they would like to share about networking, maybe their ideal position, or how you would move to get there?
Can I piggyback quickly, Haley?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So my purpose of attending today as our state liaison is to just say, all of you can reach out to me, and thanks for, like Angela, where you have people that are advocates for that networking amongst each other, because that's where the building taking place is much more comfortable. But I'm your friend and partner in that. So if it's ever that you just want to talk about potential career directions that you want to go in, or just look into different networking opportunities, doing more of this, I definitely have a means to create that. So I really don't, necessarily think there's one right way to do this. So I really echo what Haley's saying. I think you're 150 million% correct on that. And I'm grateful that yourself and Barb created this session for today to allow what does that look like and what are the ways that we speak on it that are more appropriate. Networking doesn't always have to be networking, but building, I love that that's the direction the conversation is going in. So that's all I will contribute, but I'm here if y'all need me.
Well, as far as this, the building idea, currently I have an interview lined up for January 4th, so I'm pretty excited about that. So I reached out to, when I was applying for the position, I had to submit my my references. So when I contacted my references, one of them, who was my advisor for my independent study at Providence College, she referred me to Peter Palumbo because he used to work at Dean College, and that's where I'm applying for the job. And so I set up a meeting with Peter Palumbo, and then he referred me to Katie Fernandez, who also works at Providence College, but used to work in the department where I'm applying at Dean College. So it just kind of almost naturally happened. And also, I've had a similar experience down at URI. I'm very curious about what goes on. So I ask a lot of questions, which sometimes probably a little annoying to people, but I want to know what I want to know. So what I did find, though, is I connected with some different professionals in the university college, and they are so welcoming and so willing to talk to you about what they're doing. They're very excited about what they're doing, and they're happy to share. So I don't think you should be afraid to reach out to people, because they want to talk to people, and they want to talk to different people that they don't normally see on Zoom.
Going off that, Barb, as well, I know I said I was going to stay quiet. Look at me, I can't help myself. Y'all laugh. I think many of you in the room know me as it is. So, but I will say that building is almost the best word, because you may not be right out of grad school going into the profession, but you may be, I don't know what's early, 3 years, 4 years in, and really be looking for what those next steps are. And that's another time where you're really going to need networking in that. And I think it's really important to consider that the building always happens and will continue to happen, even if it's just, I don't think the questions are a bad thing, Barb. I think they're great. But I'll say that in terms of like even the next building that you might do might be just to do research, like Barb was saying. Like it doesn't need to be a job change. So I think we network for a lot of different purposes. And I think that's important to highlight, to consider where, when, and why. Back to our why from our opening, right? But where do we need and why do we need networking or building, if you will?
I have a question. So I graduate in May, and it's the exciting time where you're like on higher ed jobs, and you're looking, and you're like, okay, like this is interesting. I'm learning so much about TRIO, which I never even like knew about, which I find it very intriguing. But when do you like suggest is like the right time to apply? Because I'm in that weird phase where I didn't graduate yet, but I would love to be in a position where when I graduate, I know I have a job like there. But a lot of times, especially now, what you're seeing is like, oh, looking to fill the position by like February 14th. And you're like, well, can't really do that. So like, do you guys have any suggestions on like, do I wait or should I just go for it, and just see how it plays out, things like that?
Yeah, I think those who are in the field might be able to speak better to it, and I don't have that much knowledge. I know it's something for those of you who are in PC's higher ed program, that is something that's being addressed in our Practice 2 course next semester if you're in that section. However, Lisa has talked very briefly about this with Barb and I before, and something she has talked about and mentioned is negotiating that time frame. So being able to interview and say, I'm still in my grad program, but I would be able to come in and work with you at the end of May once I graduate. And, you know, taking that opportunity to do that if they really want you and they desire you for whatever assets you have, whether those skills are relevant to a position or just something that they deem important in their institution and culture, they should be able to negotiate that time frame with you. I see no reason why they wouldn't.
And also just in the future, because and thank you for asking the question and having and guiding the conversation this way. So I know myself, Zach and I kind of related in the way of being first gen or low income, right? And that those identities that we bring to the table, especially in like TRIO programs and those things. I see one of the people I work with, Swami here, right? So one of the things that college teaches us how to learn, right, in the academics, but then this professional navigation, this is a whole other course, it's a whole other training, there's a whole other building block that we all need. And so I can drop on the link here. There's actually a resource I personally use and I still use it today. It's called Work It Daily. And basically as a resource is a person who worked over 25 years, who's a CEO in HR, and now kind of bringing in a simple way and kind of a virtual way to really learn these skills and these questions, because you are able to negotiate, right? And coming from like certain backgrounds for myself, like low income, I remember people told me negotiate a salary. I was like, what is that? Why am I? Thank you for giving me this job, but you come with certain skills and certain assets and very special because of our identity, right? That these things nothing is so rigid. They might say that you can still shoot the apply, right? And hopefully once you get into that interview phase, that shows that they want you, and if you wow them, maybe they'll be patient to wait, or you can negotiate something and be like, okay, maybe on these days I could work for you while I still, it can be very, and I always thought it was very, very rigid, but once you're good, and people want that and they'll work with you for that, and you can kill them with enthusiasm too.
Really, really appreciate that, because I am first gen, so getting through college, I was like, okay, boom, I did that. Like, that's good. But, I'm first gen in my master's program too, technically. So it's like, when it comes to like a salary and things like that, like I go to my mom, she doesn't understand. She thinks I'm going to be a professor. And I'm like, mother, like, no, higher education does not mean like I'm going to school to like teach, So it's still like navigating and understanding that. And I'm like kind of learning the idea of like negotiating and I'm just like, how do you do that? Like, I'm just taught to be like, if someone gives you something, say thank you, appreciate it. So I hope that resource will be super helpful for me, because I am, I'm just the kind of thank you, move on. But I want to be able to advocate for myself to, let them know that I brought myself here and I can do this also. So thank you so much for that.
If I can chime in too, I would agree. I think that's great advice from Benjamin. Having been a hiring manager before, I can say that I would be willing to wait a month or 6 weeks or whatever it is if I find the right person. So definitely reach out now. Start sending those resumes out, to the jobs that you think are a good fit. But as Lisa also said, just be upfront. Say, hey, look, I am in my program. I expect to graduate in May. I'm willing to be flexible. I'll do what I can, but this is my circumstance. But if on paper anyway, I identify that you might be the right person, I'll give you an interview. And really that's your primary goal with sending those resumes out. You want to get your foot in the door, get an interview. And that's frankly great practice. Even if you don't get the job, you have that experience of having that interview. So I'd say definitely go for it.
Tim, you just said something so important though, or alluded to it, but I really would like to build off it if I may. The first offer that you receive doesn't need to be the job you take. So it's really easy and exciting, and you want to say thank you for somebody giving you a job. But just know every day you're going to that job. And if it's not the best for you, it's going to be just a job. So, I think we talk a lot about dreams and passions and desires and contributions that you all have and abilities and skills and talents to afford this field and afford us as colleagues and your students. And I think it's really important that you don't settle. So I think it's a happy couple, negotiation and taking a job that's appropriate for you. So I wouldn't necessarily always take the first, especially if you have other opportunities that are working for you. I'm careful in giving that advice, knowing that we are in a pandemic. I'm aware of what I'm saying, I'm aware of job availability and when it comes, but just consider, if this is a temporary position. So you may take that first offer, but you may want to consider what are your, and keep that search process going as well. And that may be the safest way to navigate the situation that we're in and the systems in place for us right now. But just, be aware as you're negotiating and accepting, what you're signing up for. And again, happy to help. And Ben, thank you for that resource.
And as the jump off what Lisa was saying, this is what I appreciate, right? There's so many levels, right? We have Tim who's worked on that side, right? I'm a new incoming professional. I've been after I graduated 3 years ago. I've been working nonstop, right? We have Lisa who's been at there's so many levels, right? And with the resources working daily, I remember in that negotiation, they have a whole negotiation course, and one of the things they were talking about, okay, if you can't get the salary you wish or desire, right? You can also open the conversation, and it could be completely normal to just talk. Okay, well, what can be done for me to get to that raise, right? Or have kind of a developmental conversation. If, because I would like, right, when a place of pandemic, it's tough. It's hard out here right now, right? But at least those conversations can be had of looking at, okay, kind of be clear on your markers to see like what they expect. And if you can blow that out of proportion, you can have clear understanding of what a raise looks like or getting to that level.
I think to go back to something Tim was saying, if you do apply for a job, you're wanting to get the interview, and no matter if you get the job or not, the interview is great practice. Like, for myself, so when my intern year, in the fall, we were going to hire somebody to start in January. So my supervisor said, as part of your graduate or part of your internship, I want you to interview for this position. She knew I wouldn't get the job because I still had a whole nother semester before I graduated and another semester before, I'd be able to start working. But I interviewed, and a few months later, they created my position, and they said, there's no need for you to interview again because you already interviewed previously for the job that you knew you weren't going to get. But, just the practice and just, it's funny how it worked out because I worked in my supervisor's office. So she went across campus to a different office and called me for my interview. So they said, you've already had the experience, this was practice. You thought you were practicing, but you presented yourself in a good way. So, here's the job. And obviously it's not that simple. It's, it's not just, you did well, here's the thing, but, just use every opportunity as an opportunity. If you interview for a job and you don't get it, then you say, what did I do well? Or, what could I have done differently? Or, maybe this just wasn't the right fit for me. So, it's always an opportunity. Just see everything as an opportunity.
I think that's something that, once again, briefly addressed in my internship course this past fall. A lot of people have had the same questions, like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. A lot of institutions don't have job openings. Or job openings specifically in the field I'm looking to get into, what do you recommend? And I think with building comes the idea of maybe you don't start in a position that you're necessarily looking to be in for the rest of your career, or it's not where you initially wanted to start. But if you can get your foot in the door, you have that building opportunity to network with other people that you can eventually get to that position. You can eventually get to where you were looking to be. And I think that's one of the more difficult things I want to say about being in this position right now as a grad student looking to enter the field in the midst of a pandemic. But at the same time, it'll also bring, so many new skills and maybe even a larger network than I originally would have had. So I think that's important to consider too, as someone who's saying, this is where I want to be. I don't know if I'm going to get there right now, but not being concerned with not being there right now or once graduation comes.
Really important too, Haley, to speak to your point. I tell people when they're in that situation, and this may not, again, none of my or anyone's advice is a one size fits all, right? But I'll say that it's important to think of you accepting jobs as also accepting a chunk that you're putting on your resume. And I say that because although it may not be that you are an academic advisor, there may be advising embedded into that. So when you consider what's in a job description and you consider what you're putting on that resume to meet that description, as long as what you're in, for example, a lot of institutions say you have a master's degree and 2 years experience of academic advising in higher education. And Academic advising, though, if you're advising for a TRIO program, but not necessarily curriculum based, let's say, you are academic advising them. So or you can say, if you're in a club or organization that's run out of student affairs, but that club or organization that you're an advisor for is an honor society for a major, and that encompasses academic advising, that's phenomenal, because you can call that academic advising. So a little backwards way of considering things is, one, looking at the job description, but also considering that you're getting out of the position once, and if you should accept it, the chunk that you're going to gain on your resume from that experience, because then you can apply to those other jobs when they do open up, and they will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just,
Oop, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I was in a situation similar to that. I graduated undergrad 5 years ago and didn't know what I was gonna do, and found myself into higher ed. And like, I came to I work at Providence College now, and my department is now, I've been there for a year, and they like want to open these opportunities to be like, oh, you want to go into advising? Well, help us advise students next year when we're short on faculty. So just like look into opportunities of the current job that you may have and see what growth opportunities there might be within that position.
That's something so often discussed, whether it be in an internship or a current job position, just learning every possible skill you can, and not in like an overwhelming way, but taking the opportunities that you can get to grow your own skill set and learn different aspects of whether it be your department, maybe even outside of your department. Those are really the opportunities that's going to elevate there we go, elevate you as a professional within the field, when you can sit down and say, well, I've had experience doing this and this and this, and it just grows your repertoire of everything. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. Thank you, Benjamin, for wanting to stay connected with all of us. I greatly appreciate that. Yeah, does anyone else? Barb and I have a last minute plug, but before we go into that and talking about a lot of the benefits of being a NACADA member and all of the networking that provides all of you, for those who are new to NACADA, do any of you have any last minute questions or thoughts that you would like to share around networking?
I had a question for the group. What are people's thoughts on LinkedIn? Because in the grad program, that was like, if you don't have a LinkedIn, you're never going to get hired anywhere in your life. And my LinkedIn's pretty pitiful looking. It's a picture. I remember it was like a checklist of things not to include in your LinkedIn profile. It was like, don't wear a hat, wear professional attire, something. And I was in a ball cap with a dog at a football game. And my professor was like, what are you doing? You're not going to get hired. And I got a job, obviously. But, for me, it's obviously a great tool, but I was just kind of curious to see what others thought about LinkedIn.
I think LinkedIn is a good tool, but I think you have to use it wisely. I don't think that connecting with everyone under the sun is probably the best way to go. And I do have a little tip sheet for LinkedIn. If you'd like me to email that to you, I'd be happy to do that. And I send it to my students as well. And yes, the baseball hat and the dog probably isn't appropriate for that. But I think it's a good network, but I don't overdo it. But I do like to connect with people who I feel like I can offer something to them, they can offer something to me, and it's kind of that building relationship. And I don't think that's something that happens in mass. So I'll be happy to email that to you or to anyone else. Our career education class was fortunate enough to supply that resource. So I've been using it over and over for my students.
I think Ben modeled how LinkedIn should be used perfectly. So I think when you have a collective purpose and you have that means to jump into a group message or connect and share things with each other that are relevant and pertinent to each other for where each other's at, I think, Ben, you just modeled it absolutely perfectly. So I think that instead of sending the mass invitations and connections and that be very blanketed, like Barb, you were just saying, again, spot on. I think our session modeled that really nicely today. And Ben, thanks for creating that for us.
Also, sorry, Ben, I didn't mean to kind of throw LinkedIn to the side. It's more of a me thing. I don't use it because my profile is not great, but sorry, I certainly appreciate the connection.
No,
And I
yeah,
have it.
I do not take no offense. And I think the reality is, Zach, I think sometimes LinkedIn can be the status quo of professionalism, and obviously that's changing as we're developing because we're a new wave of professionals. So, the way that we adapt to the way our picture represents is, because at least for me, the way I see professionalism is that you know your stuff, and you're there at a timely manner, you're organized, right? Like those things. I kind of see it as business, right? Like I'm a business of one, and I make sure I'm handling my own, right? It doesn't matter how I might look in my picture, but when we show up to an interview, when I give you my service, you're gonna be blown away, and that's just like a ticket item, it's not like the main thing, because when these employers look at your skills, they look at what you bring to the table. I think that's gonna weigh more than the hat you have in your baseball game. Now I know you like baseball, you know what I mean? And that's also part of the human factor, because if we're just robots and everybody looks the same on LinkedIn, then what's the point of having LinkedIn? And so with me, I always kind of have a lot of pushback with what professionalism is supposed to be, because it's evolving. And when we're so professional, right? Like sometimes that can cut off from giving the service to somebody because now it's intimidating, right? Like nobody just walks into a doctor's office to talk to doctors and have informational interviews or build because it's scary. And that's part of it, And and especially our profession as advisors, we have to be welcoming in every part, because that's how we get people. That's how we get to work with students, especially students who are developing. I can talk about this for hours, but yeah. But I never take it personally, Zach. So I appreciate you.
Well, Zach, I have to fess up. My LinkedIn picture shows me as a brunette. And as you can see, I've got my lovely gray hair. And I've been thinking to myself, I really need to update that photo. Sooner or later, I'll get around to it, right?
Friends, I do just want to point out, we definitely can keep this conversation going. Our other conference attendees may start popping in as this is our closing room. So just so you know, our room is going to morph into that, but definitely don't feel like you have to stop the conversation. You may just see some new people enter. Just wanted to keep that on everyone's radar. And thank you, Michelle, again, who's our executive office representative, for monitoring and keeping us, aware of time, and for facilitating our breakout rooms. So thanks, Michelle. Shout out to you.
So if I could, I just put into the chat the link to the membership for NACADA, and I just wanted to show you that. This is the membership page for NACADA. Student membership is $20 a year. A general membership for an employee at an institution, an accredited higher education institution, is $75. I think depending on where you work, they may or may not allow some of the funding for that. But one thing I wanted to point out, there's position announcements here. And I'm always looking for to see what's going on in higher ed. I look at highered.com, and I was looking the other day on highered.com, and then I looked here and I did see additional postings here that were not on highered.com. So just be sure to take advantage of all of the different job posting sites that can show opportunity. So this position announcements, I'll just click on it today. There were quite a few actually. So this is posted by NACADA and it lists by region. So I was pretty impressed. There was quite a selection. So even if you want to move elsewhere, there's some opportunities listed here as well. So that's our commercial today. And we're really happy that all of you came today and shared in our networking event. I'm very happy that the PC crowd showed up in fine form. And this has been really great, Lisa. I think it's been good for all of us.
Thank you. And I think, again, it's so much more than us just sharing an idea. It can't function without everybody showing up and attending. So, I mean, definitely extending the thank you to each and every one of you and those joining our room. Hopefully I think both of you ladies did a phenomenal job. Hopefully, this was some helpful stuff, but I think, again, as many of you vocalized, that we need to keep this conversation going. So whether it's again, I kind of err on the side with Ben here. If you send me a DM on Instagram, phenomenal. And if you email me, that's great. And, you know, just get to me and get to each other and make that happen. If we do a group FaceTime or a Zoom to just hang out and bounce ideas off each other, I think that's where building happens. So I forgot who said it. I think it was Zach. You go and get a drink with somebody and that's building. That's amazing to me. Like, I think that's professional because it's mentorship. It's, you know, build it, it's growing. And I was mentioning earlier, we don't get to deem ourselves mentors for anybody else. That's something that's earned, and it's something that's a relationship of trust. So, you know, I am nobody. You'll never hear me call myself somebody's mentor unless they've vocalized that and made that quite clear first. So again, I think that building goes with, there's a lot of different things that go into it. And again, it's not even just a couple, it's like a whole family of things at that point. So yeah, definitely I invite the conversation to continue. I think this one is important to continue. So I hope that we find a space, whether it be following Ben's model on LinkedIn or on another platform, just make sure it happens. That's the last thing I'll leave you all with. Just waiting for the rest of our people, I guess, to come back. But